Good evening and welcome to the first installment of the New Age of Hosting brought to you by Basil Hayden. My name is Adam Harris, brand ambassador for Basil Hayden and your host tonight. Over the next couple of weeks and 4 installments of these episodes in this series, we're going to be talking about how to entertain around the holidays, how to bring friends and family together at a time where it might not be so easy to bring friends and family together. So one of the great things about a good bourbon in your glass like Basil Hayden is that it instinctually makes you want to be around people, but at a time when you can't be around those folks as much as you'd like, how can we get together and how can we bring the spirit of the season, or really any season of friendship, together to come to life in a way that really emotionally connects us the way that we've been able to in the past. Over the next 2 weeks, as I mentioned, we will be sharing lessons on how to accomplish some of those things. And tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to introduce Basil Hayden's to you as a bourbon. We're going to go through a tasting, and we're also going to get a little insight for our special guest, the Cocktail Bandits, joining us from the Holy City, one of my favorite places to visit when we can do so. And we're going to talk a little bit about cocktails. So tonight we're going to bring to life the bourbon itself and also some fantastic cocktails to make with Basil Hayden's bourbon. What we want to do is we want to encourage everybody to follow along. We want to encourage you to, take a little sip with us, do a little mixing with us if you're available to, and learn some tricks and tips that are going to help you entertain distanced, of course, or responsibly, of course, and make sure that we're having the best time that we possibly can during these unique times. I didn't say that word unprecedented. Oops, I just did. But anyway, what I want to do, go ahead and you'll see that there is a QR code right there. That QR code, if you'll scan that and swipe through, you will now learn a little, you'll be able to follow through with some of the recipes that we're going to go through tonight. We'll be able to follow through with some of the little tips and tricks, as I mentioned, that we'll be talking about this evening. And of course, if you would like to participate, if you have any questions, please feel free to chime in on the chat bar, which we'll be monitoring. And at a certain point of the evening with some Q&A, we'll get to those questions and answer them to the best of our abilities. So without any further ado, I would love to introduce our special guest tonight, and that's going to be my friends Johnny and Nika, who are coming from Charleston as the Cocktail Bandits. How are you doing, ladies? How's it going?
Hey, how are you?
Wasn't that kind of cool? Here we are in this virtual space. I thought that was very appropriate that you would just sort of virtually appear. It's almost like you're being beamed up to the Basil Hayden bar, isn't it?
Magic.
Well, thanks for having us, Adam.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you guys for joining us. It's really nice of you to take a little time and share your passion for bourbon and a good cocktail with us over here. And maybe just before we get into it, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourselves?
Absolutely.
Well, thanks again to you, Adam, and to Basil Hayden's for having us tonight. I am Johnny Caldwell.
And I'm Tanika Reeves,
and we are the Cocktail Bandits,
your curly ladies who talk cocktails daily.
And just as you said, we are located in beautiful and historic Charleston, South Carolina. We want to encourage everyone to come on down to the Low Country once it's safe to travel about in the near future. But here in Charleston, we curate custom cocktails, and we also host events to shed light and to shed awareness on our food and beverage culture here in the South.
Yes. You have an amazing food and beverage culture down there as well.
Yes, and with heavy emphasis on beverages, we like to curate experiences for every occasion, whether it's a baby shower, whether it's a barbecue. We like to focus on spirits, but being beverage enthusiasts, we focus on non-alcoholic and alcoholic options so everyone can be involved. Young, old, pregnant, non-drinkers, sobriety. We want to include everyone.
That's right. I mean, think about how much you drink in a day. Coffee, tea, water, kombucha, milk. I mean, there's a way to add a little something special to all those beverages, and we deign to be those people to help you with that.
Yes.
So as those gatekeepers to a good drink, what makes you gravitate towards Basil Hayden's when you're thinking about making some bourbon cocktails?
Well, Basil Hayden's is delicious and it has great spice. It's perfect for the fall and winter months when it's getting a little chilly outside. I know it doesn't get that cold in the Holy City, but we always can use a little bourbon at any occasion.
That's right. And it's so crisp. It's 80 proof and it works really well in a cocktail. So if you want to make something really special for someone who doesn't really like bourbon, or they say they don't like bourbon, this is a good bourbon to introduce them to and maybe change their minds about what they feel about bourbon.
It's very approachable.
I would agree at 80 proof. I'm glad you brought up that proof because Basil Hayden is indeed an approachable bourbon. It's something that we're not looking to challenge a friend with. It's something that we're looking to have a nice quaffable drink, something to sip on, something that's an easy sipper. And I think that, as you mentioned, as you look to entertain for a wide variety of folks in your day-to-day jobs and a wide variety of occasions, whether those be showers or barbecues or get-togethers and reunions, I think that it's always important to have, certainly your NA beverages for those people that are opting out of drinking. And then certainly you want to have those low alcohol, those low ABV occasions too, or those low ABV options that people can enjoy and go throughout the duration of the event safely, and everybody can have a good time and get home at the end of the night. So I know that you guys put a lot of thought into that mentality when putting together a drink or a menu for an event. And we certainly want to highlight that aspect of Basil Hayden's as something that you can really entertain with responsibly at home, no matter how many friends might be joining you in person or virtually, like we're all together here tonight. So I was wondering, maybe before we get into those cocktails that you guys are going to delight us with, I was thinking, since we're talking about Basil Hayden and we're talking about a nice low ABV approachable bourbon, I thought maybe I would lead us through a tasting really quick. What do you think?
I think that sounds great, Adam. We are waiting on you.
We're here for
All
that.
right, fantastic. So pour yourself a nice little serving of Basil Hayden there inside the glass. No matter what glass you're using, I'm using one of those fancy whiskey drinking glasses. What you always want to do first is you want to take inventory of the color of the whiskey, and here we have a bourbon that has a nice golden color. I think it's like a golden raisin or a dark straw. You'll notice there. You can swish the whiskey around in a glass if you want to. Kind of like wine, you'll see that whiskey has legs that it leaves inside the glass there, but because it's from Kentucky, you better believe they're thoroughbred legs, right?
Thoroughbred, like that.
See what I did there? Now, what we want to do is we want to take a little sniff of this to get a nice idea of the aroma of this whiskey. And so bourbon is going to be really announced with the hallmark aromas of vanilla and caramel. But Basil Hayden is a little bit different than a traditional bourbon. The fact that we use twice the amount of rye in our mash bill to create a little bit more of a spicy aroma and a spicy flavor when we're talking about the profiles in Basil Hayden. So whereas when we put our nose inside the glass there and part our lips and begin to breathe in to get some of those aromas, you will notice that there's a nice amount of spice up front, some floral notes, some grassy notes, maybe some herbaceous notes like peppermint. But you'll also notice that you do get those bourbon-based notes of vanilla and caramel, the oak influence, inside that aroma profile as well. So whereas we are a bourbon, we're a bourbon that's a little bit different in the fact that we use that high rye mash to create that unique aroma. And then if we have done our job, I like to think that most of the time on a good bourbon that the flavor will deliver what the aroma promises. On sugar, you have that oak influence and then that nice finish of some of those dried fruits that are in there. Yes. And then I think too, you'll notice the finish. Is this a long mouth-watering finish? No, but it is mouth-watering, but it's not that long, high-proof mouth-watering finish, right? What you do have here is something that is pleasant and medium-bodied with a nice medium finish too. So Basil Hayden, 80 proof, high rye bourbon. It is just a fantastic whiskey to welcome friends in. It works for a person that's coming into the bourbon category for the first time, or even for those seasoned connoisseurs and veterans as they refine their palate and make their way back to something to just sit there and sip on in all seasons there. So anyway, what I'd like to do is hand it over to y'all.
For sure. I mean, I'm still like savoring over this Basil Hayden.
Enjoying the vanilla flavoring, the notes. It's really, really delicious. And you can sip on it like this, but we're the Cocktail Bandits. And we are going to make a wonderful cocktail.
Before we get into the cocktail stuff, we do want to give you guys a little bit more context on who we are and what we do here in Charleston. Tanika and I are friends. We met the very first day of college 16 years ago.
16 years ago.
At the College of Charleston, we were little babes. We didn't know anything about this food and beverage world. But here in Charleston, we were seeing so much growth happening and so much attention on our chefs, but no one's really talking about the bartenders and the mixologists.
Well, we did know a little bit. We knew how to drink. We knew how to eat. We just didn't know. We didn't really appreciate the experiences. So when we turned 21, we decided to go out and really educate ourselves on spirits. And when we finished college, Johnny went off to law school, and I got into the bar scene
Mhm.
where she would come when she was like free from all of her studies from 10 long hour, 10 days, 10 long hour days,
Goodness
whatever.
gracious.
And she would come in and she would try my beverages and let me know what tastes good, what worked. It really inspired me to go further and really look at this as a career.
Right. And that's really when I started to appreciate the craft. I went into making beverages, making cocktails. You know, there's so much attention on the chef and how the chef designs the dish and where they source the ingredients. But bartenders do the same thing. And I would see Tanika at the bar making these ingredients and so excited to share them with me. And I'm like, wow, there's more going into this than just throwing some liquids in a glass and serving it up. So I became more of an active consumer as opposed to just being someone who passively was just slamming down drinks. So now I really got an appreciation for drinking. And then I got my own cocktail book. And then we as a collective made all the drinks in the book and with our own little Charleston flair in it, using local ingredients like muscadines and loquats to add a little bit of that holy city flair in our drinks. And we shared all of that on Instagram.
Yes, Instagram was just up and coming at that time. There wasn't even a term for influencer at the moment. So we were able to get in there really early and show our love to other followers and connoisseurs of beverages. And who knew that so many people wanted to see women talking about booze? And in about 2 or 3 years, our social media exploded. And we got so many opportunities to travel, not only locally, but nationally and internationally, all learning about wonderful spirits like Basil Hayden.
And what we learned is that you definitely have to educate yourself on your craft. I mean, we've delved in and we've done a lot of research. Just in certain areas like tequila, we tried over 400 different types of tequila.
Wow.
Woo!
Yeah.
It's a lot, Adam, but
Yeah.
somebody's got to do it.
Where was my invite?
It took time. It took a lot of time, Adam, like lots of time.
But we're coming to Kentucky to visit. We're going to go and get our bourbon fix in as soon as it's safe to go out and sample and visit again. So hopefully we'll be able to see you in person very soon. But we use all of that knowledge to create this cocktail and others like it. The Ginger Bells is going to be good for Thanksgiving, Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Friendsgiving, however you celebrate this holiday season, you can serve up this Ginger Bells cocktail and it'll be a real crowd pleaser.
Absolutely. So we're going to do a little bit of bar one-on-one.
Mhm.
We know that there's a lot of novice bartenders out there, and we want to kind of do a little introduction on what tools you guys would need for your cocktail curations at home. So we are going to start off with the mixing tin, the most important.
It definitely is. This one that we have is beautiful as copper. It's 3 pieces, but you build your cocktail inside this container. You pour all the liquids inside it and it's going to hold all the juices and all the ice. So you definitely want a 3-part mixing tin. If you don't have a strainer built into your top, then you're going to need a strainer. This is your classic strainer that's going to fit right into your mixing tin.
It's called the Hawthorne strainer.
And you can also use this extra fine strainer to separate all those ice particles. If you're using like freshly muddled fruit and there's some pulp, you don't want to get that into your glass. So this is going to help you separate the cocktail juice from all the other pieces that you don't want in your glass.
Yes.
Especially if you're muddling things and you've got those herbs or any sort of thing that you've kind of broken down in the cocktail, you need to have that fine strainer, or otherwise you need to have a really good friend around having a drink with you to let you know if you have anything in your teeth, right? So that's a good thing to have that strainer on hand.
Exactly.
Right.
And some of the cocktails you serve straight up and you want them to be clear, like clarified. You don't want a bunch of floaties in your cocktail. So to keep it nice and uniformed and clear and good looking in your beverage, it's good to have a fine mesh strainer to clear all of those particles.
And you want to make a good looking beverage, right?
Yeah, of course.
Absolutely.
So the next thing we have is a muddler. So the muddler is used for your fruit or your herbs to actually mash them in the mixing tin. You will use the mesh strainer when you muddle all of your ingredients into a tin after you've shaken them up. This right here blends those fruits and herbs in wonderfully in your beverages.
Mm-hmm.
We also have a spoon. We use this when we want to do like a dab or a little bit of a sweetener or some type of flavor. And we also can use the spoon to stir our stirred cocktails versus shaking them in the shaking tin.
Now, for those folks at home that are following along that might not necessarily, sorry to interrupt you, but I always think it's very important to understand when to shake and when to stir. What's your opinion on that?
Yes, it can be complicated, especially when you hear people throw around these James Bond terms talking about martinis and stuff. We like to keep it really, really simple. So if you're going to use any type of fruit juice in your cocktail, lemon, grape, lime juice, you're probably going to have to shake it, and you're going to need a mixing tin.
When you're doing a cocktail that is spirit-based, like an old fashioned or a Manhattan, things that we would use Basil Hayden's, you would use a stirring cup, and then you will stir it in the cup with maybe a large piece of ice.
Mhm.
That way it's not so diluted, and it's just chilling your cocktail and keeping the flavors intact.
That's right.
I like to make a perfect Manhattan with Basil Hayden, but I think you guys have your own perfect cocktail on deck. So you want to go ahead and make a ginger bells for us?
Absolutely. Well, the last tool that you're definitely going to need when you're making this cocktail is going to be your jigger. The jigger is going to make you make sure that your measurements are correct. So they come in different shapes and sizes. This is a beautiful elongated jigger, but the main thing is to have your ounces clearly marked. So you can look at it and see that this side is the smaller side. This is about 1.5 ounces on this end, but it'll keep your cocktail balanced because you won't put too much lemon juice in it or not enough Basil Hayden's. That would be the worst. So our first ingredient that we're going to use is lemon juice. Now you can use half of a lemon and also have to use our C-press to extract the lemon juice from it, but we're just going to use some really quality store-bought lemon juice. We like Natalie's, but whatever you have at your local store that's quality, that's not been artificially flavored or colored, is the best.
Fresh is always great, but I think that when you have a good quality juice that you can get at a store, I think go for that, especially when you're entertaining at home. Keep it easy on yourself. You're probably worried about hors d'oeuvres. You're worried about the flow of the evening, depending on how big the group is or not group is, whatever you might be doing, the virtual background that you might be selecting, all those sort of things are going to be taking up your brain space. You don't have to worry about squeezing juice. It's fine to go ahead and grab a great quality lemon juice or a lime juice out there.
We agree. We're using 1/2 ounce for this cocktail.
But first squeeze is always best, just FYI. So our second ingredient we're going to be using is apple juice. This cocktail is super COVID friendly. So whatever you have at your house, I know it's the holidays, so people have apple cider. Mm-hmm. Apple cider is going to give you a little bit more spice. And maybe if you're lucky, some bubbles. But with this one, it's nice and flat. It's just regular apple juice. And we're going to do 2 ounces of that to complement with the spirit once we get it in there.
And apple juice is so underutilized in cocktails out here in the world. Definitely grab yourself a good quality apple juice or apple cider and see how you like it in your other favorite beverages. Swap it out for something else. It's really unexpected.
It's such a fresh flavor, and especially if you're working with a little bit of citrus and a good base spirit like Basil Hayden, that apple juice stays fresh. It doesn't really become any sort of muddied flavor to the cocktail whatsoever. It just keeps it nice and bright. So I love highlighting apple juice. I agree with you. It's definitely something that's not used as much as it should be. And, I love the fact that you're providing sort of a flexibility with this cocktail here and saying if you used it you could do this with apple cider if you wanted to. And certainly if you headed that direction, you start opening up the opportunity to make this maybe a hot cocktail, depending on how cold it might be outside, right?
Exactly.
That too.
Exactly.
And as Tanika said, even maybe there's some apple ciders that have bubbles in them. So now you have something that has a little bit of effervescent in the glass as well.
And it's not so sweet. So we're not really big fans of super overly sweet cocktails. We want to enjoy the spirit and not really worry about hangovers the next day. So it's not super sweet and it's balanced with the bourbon.
That's good. Perfect.
Now for the main ingredient, the Basil Hayden's bourbon, we always wait to the end to add our liquor because who wants to waste any drop of alcohol? Not us.
Yes.
1.5 ounces of this Basil Hayden's. And as we said earlier when we were tasting it out, it's so tasty. It's a little warm on the inside. It feels like a nice welcome hug from a friend you haven't seen in a while. A nice embrace. So it's going to play up really nicely in this cocktail.
In your home. So if you wanted to do 2 ounces, no one's going to judge you. I know we aren't.
This is the new age of hosting, not the new age of judging. So there's been no judging going on these last many months.
To go under our bar to get us some ice.
You have to have that ice.
Ice is so important. We call it the 4th necessary ingredient for a cocktail. You need spirit, sugar, a little bit of sweetener, and we add ice because it helps balance out the cocktail and dilute the cocktail.
What's the usual dilution that you guys look for on a cocktail?
Oh man, it depends again if it's going to be spirited or if it's more fruit forward, juicy forward. Now, really, for the shaken cocktails, it comes down to the glass. Once we get it shaken up and we can show you what it looks like, that's when you'll know that it's ready.
It's super frosted. And when you're doing a stirred cocktail, the ice will kind of tell you with the sounds whether it's done being diluted into the drink.
There you go. There you go.
So secure your lid on your mixing tin. And now we're gonna shake it up.
All right.
Hey, you gotta shake it up with us, Adam.
I'm doing my best. Doing my best.
There you go. And see if you can look at the shaker. You can see how frosted the shaker is. This is how you know it's been diluted and incorporated enough when it's cold to the touch and there is condensation on the mixing tin. So that's saying we're ready.
We're ready.
It's whispering, it's ready.
So once all of that goodness is mixed up in your glass, we're going to pour it into an iced rocks glass. So we put a little bit of ice in there before we put the cocktail in there.
That's right.
And then now we are going to use a topper. So we're using ginger beer. If you have ginger ale at home, that works perfect as well. So we're going to top that thing with.
Now, because you have so much flexibility, we've talked about apple juice versus apple cider, ginger ale versus ginger beer. You know, it makes you could really kind of go spicy if you wanted to by using apple cider with the ginger beer, depending on the spiciness of the brand that your preference is. But also you can kind of meet in the middle like you guys are tonight with using the apple juice and then a spicy ginger beer, right?
Yes, exactly. And with the spicier it gets, the more you'll taste the Basil Hayden and the rye inside of the Basil Hayden. So either way, you're getting a wonderful surprise.
I was trying to give you the alley, and I'm glad you took the oop. That was exactly where I was going there.
So now we are going to garnish our cocktail because we love accessories. If you haven't noticed, we like to keep it cute. So what we're going to do is add 2 slices of apple on the top. And then we're going to add basil because Basil Hayden's. And what we like to do is we like to throw a little slap on our basil to kind of open up those aromas. So once you put it in your glass, that's all you smell.
So fresh.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. And you can go crazy with the garnishes. If you feel inclined, you can also shake some cinnamon on top of your apple slices to give some more of that spicy notes. And then people can nosh on it and have a little snack as well. You know, you love an edible garnish, right?
Absolutely.
Yes, if you want to make it more festive, a little bit of cinnamon on top, maybe a little like rim, half a rim.
Brown sugar on the rim. That would be cool too.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, I always, we eat with our eyes first, we drink with our eyes first, whether that's looking at a neat pour of whiskey with that nice golden hue in the glass, or whether that's going to be a cocktail like you guys have just done. When you see that visual of that beautiful garnish, that fresh basil, the wonderfully cut and symmetric fan of the apples, I think it's just, that is like the bow on the gift that you're giving your guest, right? And I think that is such an important thing. If you're going to do a garnish, do it 100%. Don't just kind of half do a garnish. You want to make sure that you are giving that garnish the most respect that the cocktail deserves.
Right. You eat with your eye. I mean, you drink with your eyes first.
Mm-hmm.
So why not have a beautiful beverage to complement the beautiful flavor?
And speaking of that, keeping the garnish fresh, if you're going to use the fresh apple slices, squeeze some of that lemon juice that you're going to use in your cocktail on the apple slices to preserve it. You don't want it turning all brown before you put it in the glass, because that's not going to look good. It's not going to be appetizing. So squeeze that lemon juice on it. Mm-hmm.
That's a great tip.
It'll keep them fresh and it'll look great in your glass. And definitely, if you can get your hands on some fresh Granny Smith green apples, that's going to give some tart flavor to that cocktail as well. I think it's going to be, that's like the best way to serve it up.
Agreed.
Sounds delicious. Well, I'm going to sip my Basil Hayden with you while you guys enjoy that cocktail. Do you have is there anything that you've been thinking about as you're looking to be out there in the next month or so, 2 months, 2.5 months through the new year, how you're looking to entertain safely during this time of the COVID?
Yes, I mean, the holidays are coming up, so there's going to be a lot of hosting.
Mhm.
And we have had a lot of experience during the COVID and just learning how to host in different ways and different approaches to beverages and just getting together all in general. So, the first thing we would like to do is pre-batch beverages. And when we say pre-batching, we mean like personalizing them, either putting them in mason jars. We get small containers off of Amazon that we can pre-packaged beverages where all you would need is ice,
Yeah.
or maybe just a spirit added, like Basil Hayden's, add it to a mixture that's already pre-done. That way that we're not really congregating over a bar. We're not really getting around everyone. We're giving each other space and having great social distance.
And that's a good point about the batching, because it also cuts down on your time when you're serving. If all you have to do is add a little bit of ginger ale to the end of the cocktail before you serve, that's tremendously cut down on you being in the kitchen in the bar, making up in each individual drink. So
Yeah.
this ginger bells cocktail is perfect for pre-batching. As Tanika said, you can also add like a little handwritten note or put personalized paper straws, of course, in each individual container. So someone actually has something they can take home with them after the event that you gave them.
Yes.
I think that's a great idea to be able to kind of personalize things a little bit more, let people know that that's their drink or the drink that they're taking home is a little party favor. I think for now, we might not be, one of my favorite things in the holidays, the punch bowl. I don't think that's necessarily the most prudent pour at the moment. So, when you're entertaining at home and you wanted to do a batching size cocktail, maybe keep those store and pours handy where you have a very protected cocktail that's already been mixed that you can pour very easily, that maybe you pour the first one or two. I know the rule at my house is that I'll pour you the first drink, and then after that you can go ahead and help yourself. But we want to make sure that everybody's keeping it safe. And I think those store and pours are a great opportunity where they know that they're going to get a great cocktail that's balanced and measured out the way that you want to make it, but also they can pour it safely, right? Without having too much interaction outside of the just the tools that you're going to be using.
Absolutely. We've seen a lot of our friends and loved ones to get together via Zoom, and we just talk. We all like get a list of ingredients together, and then we'll just prepare our beverages all together. So we are communing, we are getting a little tipsy, we're celebrating the holidays, and we're also being safe.
That's right. And that is tipsy and safe is very important during the holidays, right? Tipsy and safe, two very important words. Now, we have a couple of great questions that have come through on the chat here. And so pivoting away from what to do during COVID times, can this cocktail be made with rye? Suggestion, maybe dark rye. Do you guys have any experience using Basil Hayden dark rye?
We don't have any experience using Basil dark rye, but we do have experience with rye whiskey, of course. And I feel like the rye whiskey would work perfectly with the cocktail, like Basil Hayden, like with the rye in this particular Basil Hayden's 80 proof. It just brings out all of the flavors of the apple, of the ginger, and even when you add in your garnish, it will bring out those spice notes from there as well.
Yeah. I would say that if you like the way that this cocktail is headed, and if you're following along at home and making this drink, and you like that spicy component that Basil Hayden brings as a bourbon itself, I would recommend maybe trying one of our rye expressions. We do have a couple out there on the shelf right now. One of them that's easier to find is our dark rye. I think that it would definitely add a lot of body to this cocktail. And I don't know if it necessarily would add much to the drink. So I would kind of go in a different direction. And one of the things that I like to do with Basil Hayden dark rye is to actually do a little variation on a Seelbach, which I'd be happy to share at some point. But, I think that if you went with our Basil Hayden straight rye, you would be able to really enjoy it with the ginger bells here.
I'm so intrigued by this cocktail. Please explain it to us. I've never had it before.
Well, it's, Kentucky and Louisville, we have a rich history as well. We have the Seelbach Hotel down there in downtown Louisville, and a cocktail that was made. It's a bit of a modern classic. It had a fabled longer history than it actually has, but it's a little bit more of a modern classic. It mixes traditionally bourbon with champagne, a little orange liqueur, and some bitters. And so the trick is to serve it ice cold. I like to use a little Basil Hayden dark rye, about 1 ounce. I add about 7 dashes of Angostura, 7 dashes of orange bitters, about a ½ ounce of a dry curacao. I stir that ice cold, strain that into a champagne flute, and then I top that with the coldest, crispest bubbles that I possibly can, whether that's going to be a drier Prosecco, or whether that's going to go straight champers there. That's a little cocktail that I like to make. So enough about my drinks.
That will be stolen. That will be stolen, Adam.
Feel free.
Delicious.
You can have it for free. You don't have to steal it.
Okay.
But try it. I think you might enjoy that, especially around the new year when you're popping bottles anyway.
Yeah.
Real quick question from
mention that
Clifford.
too.
That's a good name. What is a good chocolate to complement Basil Hayden's? Do you guys have any? I know that there's some great chocolatiers that I've experienced down there in Charleston. Do you guys have any suggestions?
Yes. Yes. We
In unison,
have
hit
some
me.
amazing culinary artists here in Charleston, especially some female chocolatiers. If you go down to Christoph,
I was going to say that, Christoph's.
Artisan Chocolates. It's
I know Christoph's Artisan Chocolates. Those are
know?
delicious.
You know
He's fantastic.
That's our girl.
Yeah, he is fantastic.
Oh,
It
she's
is. It's
dynamo.
amazing.
So they make beautiful, light, rich chocolates that pair really well with a nice, rich, kind of caramelly honey bourbon like this Basil Hayden's.
Maybe that's an idea for us to do a chocolate pairing with some Basil Hayden's.
Well, we love her too.
Yeah.
Craig is our homeboy.
Yes,
Craig's everybody's homeboy, isn't he?
we go way back with Craig. And that was one of the first craft cocktail bars in Charleston.
Indeed
We
it was.
actually-
Indeed it was. It's a great spot. Great spot.
And we actually talk about Proof and other bars like that in our book, which is called Holy Spirits, Charleston's Culture Through Cocktails.
Yes, we have a book. We'd love
I
to.
think we should hear about this book a little bit more, especially as we're looking into the season of gifting.
That's right.
Yes.
This book, we're so proud of this book. It took us,
Toot your horn. Talk about it.
yes, we took about 18 months to really sit down and interview and research Charleston's culinary and beverage history. We did so much going to distilleries and plantations and breweries just to meet the makers, to understand their motivations behind their craft, and also to give people a marker on where they can come to visit at in Charleston and have some of our liquid assets.
Yes, we started off with all of the liquids that we have in Charleston, our first breweries, our first distilleries, even our first sodas and juice, kombucha makers. We have them all included in this book, and we actually comprise 50 recipes that are original, and then 5 from some of our top bartenders in the city.
We also have a little history on Charleston's beverage culture. We take it back to the beginning when Charleston was first settled, and we talk about the contributions that were given by former enslaved Africans and people who were living in the Spice Islands, bringing in all that delicious rum coming in during that time. And we bring it up to modern day and talk about our current bar trends and the happening places here in Charleston. So it gives you a little bit of everything. It entertains, educates, and empowers you through craft cocktail advocacy. And we hope that you'll put a couple in your palms on your dinner table, coffee table, office table.
Yeah. And finally, before we leave, like this little one-on-one session that we had for the home bar, it's actually extended in this book. We have a full chapter on how to build a full, efficient, amazing home bar so you guys can craft your own amazing drinks.
That's right.
That's fantastic. I know that, Charleston and South Carolina, what started there with food hundreds of years ago and what started there with cocktails, decades ago has really sort of influenced what's happened across our country as our country's grown up and as our country has come into its own self as far as realizing our culinary and cocktail heritage. You have Charleston was one of those first cities that actually had ice in cocktails,
Yes. We talk about that in the book.
Yes, it's in the book.
Yeah. What an amazing thing. Well, we could talk all day, I think, or we could talk all night and have a couple of drinks and a couple of laughs and have a lot of fun together. And we'll do this in person again, I promise, sometime soon. Thank you so much for joining us, Cocktail Bandits. It's really been a great time spending time with y'all.
Yes, we want you guys to follow us on all social media networks at Cocktail Bandits. Cheers,
All
y'all.
right.
Cheers.
Thank you very much for being here. It's been so much fun.
Our pleasure.
All right. Well, anyway, guys, thank you so much for spending a little time with me and the Cocktail Bandits tonight, and certainly Basil Hayden, as we get to learn about this new age of hosting and get to know some tips and tricks as we all start to gather safely and securely and responsibly as we can over the next month to 2 months. Again, you'll be hearing from us over the next couple of weeks with a couple of more sessions. What I would like for you to do is check out this QR code that's going to pop up right there. And what this is going to do, again, that's going to direct you to the mobile site. Swipe through that to pick up the recipes from the Cocktail Bandits. If you'd like the ginger bells, and well, hey, who didn't? Go ahead and check out that recipe there and some other little tips and tricks that may have been discussed. And we'll go ahead and one last QR code, if you don't mind. We'll switch over to the next one here. And this is going to take you to the event on Thursday. So if you liked what you saw tonight, you are going to get even more of it on Thursday, where we have some insights into how to put together the perfect cheese plate and pair that with whiskey, either that bourbon or rye with Basil Hayden. And we're going to have two very special guests. You're going to have Mr. Pat Ford from the Beehive Cheese Creamery out there in Utah. And then one of my favorite people in the world, Mr. Tim Heisler, another ambassador for Basil Hayden and the American whiskey portfolio at Beam Suntory. And they're going to teach you another level on how to entertain safely from home and do things the right way, as we are all entertaining in this new age of hosting. It has been my pleasure. I hope that you guys have enjoyed spending this half hour with us on Monday to kick off the week. Everybody have a great time, a great night, a great week. Be safe out there. Take care of yourself. And the best way to take care of yourself is a little self-love. And how can you not love yourself any more than with a little Basil Hayden by your side? Enjoy responsibly, everybody. And thanks for joining the new age of hosting. I'm Adam Harris. It's been my pleasure to be your host.